Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. We're so happy to have you here with us, whether you're watching or listening on the live or the replay. We are super excited to be soon celebrating our 1 year anniversary. Please do save the date and mark your calendars for January 15th when we have our celebratory events. We will have entertainment, education, and lots of fun. We'd love for you to join us. Our show today is The Listening Mentor, where my co host and the star of our show, Caroline Heward, and I explore various topics related to relationships and effective communication. Today's topic is 5 keys to controlling your anger. Let's welcome the Harley Street stress expert, Caroline Heward. Welcome, Caroline.
Hello, good to be here, Dr. JACALYN.
Thank you so much. Nice to have you. As you know, we always get into something juicy here on this program of Friday night for you and Friday afternoon for me, although now we're only 4 hours apart as opposed to 5. But I'm looking forward to this one. This actually came up on another show today, The Power of Etiquette and Manners. When we lose our cool, when we become overwhelmed with emotion, and we literally take that and just dump it onto the next person to come along. It doesn't matter who it is. So we're going to be talking about that today. But Caroline, as you know, you are a therapist there on Harley Street and in London, and you're helping people all the time. People come to you with symptoms, they're in distress. Tell our audience a little bit more about the work that you do as an expert.
I help people literally manage their stress. So it's whatever you're complaining about is your stress, whether you're not sleeping, that relationship that's not working, that person that makes you feel angry, whether it's a co-worker or your boss, or you've got a physical, emotional ache and pain, or you're crying all the time, feeling lonely. So whatever it is that you're complaining about, there will be a root cause to that trauma. And I help you identify the root cause and obliterate the stress that you're experiencing and move you into a state of inner peace and inner well-being. I offer a free consultation, either Zoom, Skype, or by phone. And I look at 1 or 2 symptoms and literally identify the root cause, which will move you into an inner state of peace.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing that. I was speaking with people earlier this week, various interviews on different shows. And one thing that's been coming up a number of times for people that causes them to get angry is they just can't seem to get ahead. They just feel frustrated. They're doing all the right things. They're showing up. They've got their happy face on. They're putting in the time, but yet they're not getting where they need to go. And first it starts off as fear, concern, depression, maybe. I mean, I'm using extremes for the words, but finally it ends up where they're just plain angry. Is this normal? Is it something that is cause for alarm? What are your thoughts?
Yes, it is normal. Anger is a normal response when things aren't going well. It's how we manage the anger is the more of, sort of the story. Some people are very good at managing anger and they suppress it, and other people are not good at anger, and the slightest thing can send them over their tipping edge. And so it is about levels and degrees of anger. So frustration is a level of anger. And a lot of people have frustration. They just manage that. Some people have a very, very small threshold to anger. And so the smallest thing will anger them. And then you know that that you have to be careful around them and careful around what you say to them, because they might fly off the handle, as we say in England. Anger is a very natural response. It's about managing and channeling it in the right way.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for that. So a follow-up question to that is that when someone's experiencing anger, and somebody just shared this with me recently, they're really tired. They're just kind of like, they don't have the energy, because it seems like everywhere they go, they're just running up against walls. So if this were a client, someone you were speaking to, how would you determine that root cause? So in other words, are they doing something? Are they the problem and they just don't realize it? Or is it just, hey, the planets are in alignment, this is what's going on in the universe, and just keep going ahead and your time will come?
Well, there is a bit of that in terms of planets being out of alignment and in retrograde. That can bring up emotions and unexpressed feelings for sure, because we are all frequency, we are energy beings, and we will certainly, if it's really warm and it's sunny, our mood can lift. And when it's cold and wet and windy and dark, we can feel miserable. So that can bring on the onslaught of anger about things. So angry people are in that state because there is a frequency of anger about them, about something that they have not expressed or handled in their past. So there will be an expression of anger in their everyday if that person is always angry at you, at things, at situations. There will be some unexpressed emotion about an earlier trauma that they've never dealt with. And what happens is, in order to protect ourselves, we suppress the anger, frustration, or the lack of control. And then it expresses itself in our external world with people, situations, and circumstances that will have a perpetuating cycle of making us feel angry.
Wow, thanks, Caroline. I was just really thinking about what you were saying there. So when someone's going through this and they're feeling really angry, this is something I know in my past that's come up for me personally is, you're not quite right. You're just a little bit off your game. And somebody who's close to you comes up and says, what's wrong? Can I help you? What can I do? And you're like, oh, just leave me alone. And you try to explain how you're feeling, but the other person feels the need to fix you. They feel the need to do something. They want you to feel better, and they don't know what to do. So what happens? They end up becoming angrier because it's like you want your space, and it just goes on and on and on. Is there some way to prevent this hamster wheel?
Yes, to be truthful. If you're feeling angry, it will be about something that's not working in your life, or something that you're not dealing with. And anger comes from the solar plexus. That's the emotion from the solar plexus, the saboteur of it. And it'll be because you're not feeling in some level of control about a situation, an experience, or a circumstance that you're in. And so that's where anger comes from, with the lack of control of being able to handle situations and experiences. And when somebody is trying to rescue you, they don't know what the situation is, and they're questioning of that situation. What's the matter? I'm worried about you. I want to help you. Please talk to me. And they're calling you all the time, and that just makes you feel worse, because you're not happy, you're angry, you're not handling things. And somebody reminding you only makes it worse, because when you retell the story of what you're not happy about, what you're angry about, and then they're asking questions because they don't understand why, because their world isn't in that space, what can happen is that can reignite the feeling of anger inside you, and that will actually then project it onto the other person, which is why it's not good to speak to somebody when you're angry, and to literally stop and think and pause, take a breath, and before you respond in that space of anger, stop in that moment to gather the emotions and to come back with a response that's not coming from a place of anger, that's coming from a place of you being in control.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing that. I think also what can happen, at least in my own experience, is that we know feelings are real. they're also temporary when we think of how many different types of feelings there are. And we know that the feelings we have are going to change. They're going to leave and become something else. And if we could just have that space, if we could just have that time to work ourselves through it, but yet we're not usually living in a void or a vacuum. We've got people that we have to answer to, deadlines we have to meet, people we have to take care of. And I think it's looking for that time for self-care to actually analyze, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling right now? Is it valid? Obviously, all feelings are valid, but what's coming up for me so that this doesn't happen again? Or when it does happen, I can address it quickly, because I don't know about you, but I like to feel positive energy and positive vibrations and positive feelings. And when we have these lower vibrations, like anger, it sort of just sucks us in and pulls us down, and just, I feel like it's almost like someone with something on top of her head pushing us, push, and we're fighting to get back up. So the topic today is 5 keys to controlling your anger. I don't know why I picked 5, but what's one key that we can do to control our anger if it's in a situation at work?
To pause before you respond. Because when we literally respond from that place of anger, generally we will be responding from an emotional and an irrational space for the other person, which won't work. So if you are feeling angry, it's important to stop, to think, to work out what you want to say, actually be solution focused rather than expressing what's not working for you. Yes, it's okay to do that when you are calmer, to be very truthful and authentic in why you're not feeling happy, why you are angry. But whether the big thing to do is to own that I am angry rather than you make me feel angry.
I'm thinking about this now. What if I said to you, Caroline, I feel angry when you close the door in my face and I'm trying to talk to you?
You're still making it about the other person. So when you do this, I feel like this. Nobody can actually make you feel anything because it's about your response and your reaction. So you can say, I just wanted to let you know I get triggered when you bang the door, and that's my stuff. That I would, could you possibly not bang the door? Because whatever it is that's going on for me, I get triggered by it, and then this is the I, rather than when you bang the door, you make me feel this, which is then pushing the blame onto the other person, because there is something that's going on for you that is making you feel like that, because other people can bang the door and there's no experience of stress or anger or upset. And it could be something that's come out of their childhood, something that they experienced in a relationship that is a trigger for them going back into that experience of anger.
Thank you. That's a good point. Now, what if they know that you do get triggered by the door being shut numerous times and they just do it on purpose? People are out there and they do that. They go, oh, really? How about this? Right? And you're like, stop.
So I mentioned it. It's a form of actually, sort of getting rid of our anger, that we just literally bang a door rather than hitting the person, that we bang the door.
Right.
This is where the person understands that it's your button, so that they're kind of going in there and then needling your little button. And then that is alarming that they're using that, and so absolutely it's about then managing your response to it. And
I love that. Managing your response.
You can realize that they're trying to press your buttons and literally say, all right, that's just the way they want to be. I can decide whether I get upset about it, really angry and get worked up, Or I can say, do you know what? That's just what they do. And it has no relevance or meaning. So you have to then own it. So it's all about the person owning that response mechanism they have and deciding, choosing to change a different response.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about something that I think people can relate to. We've seen it on documentaries. We've seen it when we're reading about the military, and also special training techniques that they use so that people don't show any emotion whatsoever. In fact, they don't even blink their eyes. You might not even hear them breathing because they have everything under incredible control. And what is it called? The changing of the guard. And you'll see people go off and they'll start waving and doing crazy things and nothing. There's literally no expression whatsoever. And what I'm wondering is, how do we have such extremes where people are trained to control themselves, even their breathing, and people are completely out of control? I mean, they're in the public domain. They're on Instagram. Somebody who's so famous, I'm not even mentioning her name. I can't even believe what she put on Instagram yesterday. Just completely out of control, cursing and screaming. And so my point is, how do we have two extremes like this? And where are most people? Somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Yes, that's true. And we do see the extremes as extreme, because we do see black and white. We don't generally see the shades of grey. We do see one extreme to the other, because that's how the mind picks up things. That's how it works out. We know this is one way and this is another way, but actually, I don't want to be either of them. I just want to be somewhere in the middle. When somebody has learnt, and it is a learnt thing, to control their behaviors, so the breathing is a controlled thing. Most of us are not taught, and it's not on the curriculum in school, to how to manage anger, how to actually emote, how to feel happy, what to do when you're sad, how to express that emotion. That is not a taught subject of how to manage emotions in school, in college or university. But we somehow have to work it out. We have to learn how we should be managing our emotions. And because it's not taught, we learn through others responding to things. So from a very young age, you have your parents, your siblings, your friends, extended family. So you have people around you that will be responding, and we soak it all in. We literally feel that, oh, that's the way that you respond to anger, by shouting, because every time my mum is angry, she shouts. So that's what I have to do. If I'm angry, I shout. If another person experiences that when the person is angry, that the doors bang, you say, right, that's it. When I'm angry, that my mum is angry and she bangs the doors. So that's what I do when I'm angry. And so it's not rational or thought about, it's just what that we're learning from the behaviors that are being displayed to us. So we can have a very angry grandmother, for instance, and then a very calm mother, because they've learned to manage the anger that they were growing up with. And this is how you get the extremes, that people will look for solutions because they realize they have anger management issues. And so there is no right or wrong. There's what we see as normal, and we grow up with that around us, and then we believe that is the way to express our anger.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think most of us, if not all of us, have felt we were wronged by someone else at some point in our life. And what I found is other people will give their opinion about how we should react to what someone else did to us. So, for example, I'd never forgive that person if I were you. If I were you, I'd seek revenge. I'd hunt them down to the rest, for the rest, blah, blah, blah. And then other people are very spiritual or religious, and give that person grace and pray for them and speak with them and help them. And I think in the first scenario, what could happen, and I'd love you to give your expertise in this area, is that when we take that anger and we just let it fester, just starts growing and breeding, it starts to infiltrate all aspects of our lives. And before you know it, it could be years since the incident took place, and you are just so lit up with anger that if someone mentions the person's name, look out, because you are going to go down a path of a tirade. And to me, that's so unhealthy to carry that with you for all that time. What are your thoughts about how carrying anger can impact a person mentally, physically, spiritually?
I totally agree with everything that you've just mentioned, that this is where we suppress the anger of that undealt with situation. There could be mental, emotional, physical or sexual abuse in childhood. And there is no way as a child that you are emotionally evolved to be able to handle it. And so this is where there's a feeling of not being in control of the situation at that young age. And so what happens is it can come out in your anger in your everyday, because it was never expressed. It's what we call, sort of passive aggressive, that you were passive in the identifying trauma of when you first felt angry and not able to handle the situation. And then what happens, it comes out in your everyday because it's suppressed, and whatever you suppress expresses in your current and everyday situations. And so for people that have anger management issues, and they will know that they do because others will observe that they're in an uncontrollable state of anger, or they flare up too quickly. And so they will get feedback from others, whether they be work colleagues, family, parents, good friends in their relationships. They will get that feedback. And the anger is because they didn't ever handle what was unexpressed in terms of their state of not being in control of a situation from a past trauma.
Thank you very much, Caroline. You and I have worked together for some role plays. It's got to be at least a year now. And when we did those role plays, each of us played some angry person, if an employer had some kind of anger issue or a grudge. And we both talked about it afterwards, different role plays. But I felt it here. I felt it in my chest doing a role play of an angry person. And it didn't feel good. And I know you had said something similar. I'd love to hear directly from you. And so the reason I bring this up is if someone is operating from that state on a regular basis, what does that do to their blood pressure? What does it do to their heart? It seems to me that it'd be so unhealthy that you wouldn't even feel good in your own skin.
Absolutely true. It will raise your blood pressure considerably, which means that the blood will be pumping faster around the heart, which could cause, and it can be very serious, it could cause a potential heart attack, hypertension, a potential stroke. So anger is really, really important to manage because it will affect your entire being and your health. It's also important to keep in check when you are feeling that internal rage, because it will affect your breathing. And if you're breathing in a very shallow way from the chest, which is what will happen when you're not feeling control and you're feeling in a state of danger or panic, is that you will feed the anger in a bigger way. You'll be fueling the anger, and that will turn you into a perpetuating cycle of not managing the frustration, the anger that you're feeling, and it will just make it worse. It will, tenfold the experience that you're experiencing of the anger in every aspect of your being, in any aspect and topic or conversation or person. And so, yes, it'll be very debilitating for you. And, this is how you can land up literally keeling over and having a heart attack, because the body cannot withstand that level of tension and stress, and that physicality of the blood pumping around the heart all of the time in that fast manner.
Exactly true. And I wanted to share something on this topic with you. I was dating someone, and this person had a temper, and I'll never forget, he was on a work call and he was screaming at the other person, screaming. And this is what he was screaming: I don't get heart attacks, I give them. And his whole body was shaking, literally. And I was like, I thought, oh my gosh, if that was the person on the other end of the phone, I would just hang up, have nothing to do. And by the way, he had a major heart attack a few years later, because it's building and building and building. And that's what I don't think people realize, that it could be, it could start out as something innocuous. And I'll just give you some of the triggers that I have. And I've said this before. If I have to call the cable company, please watch out, because now I have the right mindset. I have 1 hour that I will dedicate to call the cable company. So I say to myself, okay, it's an hour. Now, if it goes over an hour, I feel myself starting to lose it, because I think to myself, nothing's been resolved. I just wasted an hour and I have the same problem that I used to have. So if it's not resolved and I hang up from that call, and I may have to call again, sometimes you get disconnected. It seems like everything else looks different with those eyes, those angry cable eyes, so to speak. And it's something different for everyone, right? But we know that it's something. We know if we miss the trolley, if we miss whatever it is, and then all these things happen as a domino effect. So what are some things that we can do in advance to say, okay, everything might not go my way today. I could be fired. We could go through 1,000 things, right? Which we hate to even do that. But what can we do aside from literally putting on military armor and leaving the house saying, I'm ready for whatever comes my way today?
Well, that's a really good analogy, because some people do go to work like that. Some people do get up out of bed and that's the way that they're feeling. They're sort of in their battle suit, in their suit, ready for battle, ready for the war in their world, in terms of work, family, friends, whatever situation they're walking into. And that is because that there's some suppressed anger in them that's bringing it up like that, and they will go into a space of protection. So it's not that they're wanting to hurt you, they are protecting themselves, and they're doing that battle thing, that putting their suit of armor on, because their first stance is protection. And that's important to remember, because when somebody's in that state and their first stance is protection, the over exaggeration of communication, the shouting, is because there's something they're not feeling safe about. And it's not necessarily you, it's the way that they're feeling internally, and then it's coming up. And so one of the things I would suggest is finding some practices that help you feel more relaxed before you start your day, or when you're feeling that you're getting into that state of frustration that's turning into anger and tipping you over into boiling point. So to breathe, I know it sounds really simple, and I say this so often, but to breathe into the belly, into the lower abdomen, will take away the pressure of the shortness of breath that's here in the heart area. And because the shortness of breath here feeds the mind, it just feeds the stress. And when the breath goes down into the belly, then the breath changes because it oxygenates the whole body. And so that anger that you were experiencing starts to dissipate. And if you did some breathing, even for just 2 or 3 minutes, if you went into the toilets, the bathroom, and did some breathing privately into the belly, so extending the belly and breathing into the belly, that anger, that frustration will move into a state of inner calm and inner being. And that is an extraordinary quick thing to do to change your state of emotion and being. The other thing that I would suggest is to be solution focused. So when you step into a place, and you can't do this while you're really angry, but to find a solution to the problem. You know, if you've been having problems with the cable company and you know that X, Y, and Z doesn't work because you've tried it many times, you can actually, before you go launching into, you know, what they're going to offer you, you can say, already I have with previous technicians tried this, and this, and none of those strategies work. So with that aside, can you recommend some other things that I can do, that we can do, that will change the state of this technology not working? So you're then preempting the other person, because they're just going through, well, you know, sort of a set of faults. And if you've already gone through the scenario of these specific faults not being the fault, then you're already ahead of the game and you'll save yourself some time.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that. That's really helpful. I want to talk a little bit about two things. And one thing, let's go back to the cable company. And it could be the cable company. I don't know how it is there in your country. So I'm just going to say the nameless cable company. Many people have problems with them. They've worked on their customer service, but it's a sore spot for many people. And I think it's a sore spot even for the people who work there, because they really don't want to hear the complaints anymore. So I think what happens is, so many people are impacted by it and they're frustrated by it, and the people working there are frustrated by it, that there has to be some bigger picture, that information has to be conveyed to the leadership team that, hey, whatever you're doing, it's just not working. You need to take a different approach. But all this screaming and yelling, all it does is burn us out, and it just makes us angry, and we still need the cable anyway. So depending on where you live in the world, you might not have the option. Some people obviously have no cable, they have no internet. And then there's other countries where you have one provider and that's about it. So I think it's also managing expectations based on what the situation is. And then I think also, you and I have talked about this so many times, I think we have to look at listening skills and how we can feel we have not been heard, and that in and of itself can cause anger. And I'll give an example. I went to the doctor on Tuesday, a new gastroenterologist, and he asked me if I was on any biologics for ulcerative colitis, and I said no. So I said I run a support group for years for Crohn's Colitis Foundation, and people talk about the biologics that they're on, and they're on one, it only works for 2 years, then it works for whatever. So I shared this information, and the doctor looked at me and he said, well, of course biologics work. I don't want to talk about that. I said, oh, go to your room, little girl. You know, it's just, but they're the kind of things, like, this is a person in power, right? The person who is the expert. I went to see an expert, and it's just, no, we're not going to talk about that. That's not a good topic. So things like that, if you let them, they can trigger you because you feel like you've just gotten this. Shut up, don't talk to the hand. And we do that unconsciously all the time to each other. And when we have the skill set, we can be highly aware of it. That doesn't mean that we don't ever do it.
That's fascinating, because it's about frame of reference. That particular consultant had a frame of reference that what you suggested and said that you were looking at was not in his frame of reference. So he couldn't actually talk about it because he did not believe. And so that for him was not a way forward. It wasn't a strategy. It wasn't to be thought about or talked about, because that would waste his time. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of that in any aspect of our lives, in any topic, that, you know, we all have a frame of reference, and we either believe something or we don't. And, you know, like you mentioned earlier on about, you know, sort of feeling angry because the planets have changed, because Mercury's in retrograde, and, you know, there's an eclipse going on. Well, I have an effect from planetary changes. I don't really understand it. You know, I have effects because I'm quite sensitive. And then I work out that there's a retrograde of Mercury, and then I think, oh, that's why the tech doesn't work, you know, and that's why I'm spending silly amounts of time when something's not working. And it makes sense to me, and that's a frame of reference that I'm now using. But when I say that to other people, they go, oh, I don't know what you mean. It's just that you haven't, you need to reboot your internet, you need to do this. And yes, you can do that, and you can keep rebooting it, because I used to do that, and it didn't work. And it was because I was supposed to just stop. It was like a message to me to just stop what I was doing and go to bed, or, sort of stop working, because I was usually working late at night. So the insight to this is that you can't push somebody's frame of reference all the time. You can say, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I want to look at. And I don't have an understanding about what you're talking about. So let me share with you what my skill area is, and share with you what I can help you with directly. So that is, sort of the consultant saying, I'm not talking about it. It can be, I'm sorry, that's not my area of expertise. And when you say that, then the person feels heard, because they're not then being pushed into a corner to talk about something they really know nothing about.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That is a great way to reframe it, and I appreciate that. And I think for each and every one of us who has felt unheard or misheard, that if we take a step back and just think to ourselves in that moment, okay, obviously I didn't explain it in a way that the other person can understand it, or the other person did understand it and they're not interested in speaking about it. We don't have to get ourselves all riled up. We're coming from different perspectives. And just to continue about that doctor's appointment, because a couple other things happened that I could have really lost it. After that non-discussion about biologics, the doctor, there was no nurse in the room and I was still in my dress. The doctor walked over to the examination table, and there was that plastic, I don't know what kind of paper is on there, wax paper. And he literally took his hand and he patted the table several times, and he pointed to me. Like, in other words, you come over here and get on the table. So, like a good girl, I got up and I went over to the table, and he did his tapping on my abdomen. And then he proceeded to tap the table again like this for me to get up, and then pointed to the chair. And I thought to myself, wow, I didn't realize I'm being treated like a dog right now. C spot run, C spot sit. But to him, that's, I'm sure he has people 15 minutes after, like, he doesn't even want to talk anymore, right? He's so sick of the whole thing. I don't know how he feels, but he just has developed a shortened way of communicating to get people to do what he does, what he wants done, excuse me. But for me, I didn't feel like that was a great approach. I didn't feel like he was really identifying with me as a human being. I felt like I was a dog or some kind of animal, but I didn't leave there angry. I just thought to myself, wow, if I have a choice, I'm not going to be working with this guy, or this guy better help me feel better, because I'm not coming back to him. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, absolutely. You're absolutely right in everything that you said. I mean, that's why it made me laugh, and when you're not in the situation, that is the stuff of situation comedies. That's what will make somebody laugh. But when you're in the situation, it's not funny. It's, sort of, you are responding. And put yourself into the other person's shoes. What you mentioned in terms of him seeing somebody, every kind of 10, 15 minutes, maybe he shortened his communication. Maybe he is sick to death of saying, okay, then hop onto the couch and lie down. And, maybe he just doesn't want to say that anymore, because it's taking too much energy. And okay, then we're done now. Stand up, take a seat again. I've actually had experiences where, that happens, and they do say that, and they must be saying that every 5 or 10 minutes for each patient. So I suppose it depends on the person and how they're wanting to communicate, because all communication has an energy. And maybe that for him is just saving some words, some communication. And also we have to appreciate that 80% of our communication is non-verbal. It's our gestures, our physiology, our expressions. So maybe he's coming more from that space of non-verbal communication, because it could be that he actually has a lot of patients that are not English speaking. And so he's gesturing to make sure that they understand what's required of them. So that could be one reason and one rationale as to why that gesturing is part of his formula to work with patients.
Hablo inglés? No, no hablo inglés. I think you're right, especially in South Florida. This is a Spanish-speaking community, so that could definitely be the situation. I love having these conversations with you because it's always about bringing new perspectives. So I think once again, it's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. It was just interesting that last week on The Power of Etiquette and Manners, we were focused on the healthcare sector and how these two doctors in Pakistan are putting together this, I think it's a 5-level course about how medical students, doctors, and nurses can all learn etiquette and manners when dealing with their patients, because patients want to feel heard and they want to feel connected. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But going back to controlling your anger, as we are coming to the end of the show, you've given us a number of things to really think about. And I think if we can just sort of, I hate to put something in a silo, but if we think about ourselves as the silo, as the conduit to so many other things, how is it that we can look at our own energy and how that energy is radiating out and permeating into other people? What does that energy look and feel like? And for example, we all know people or have known people who are just downright miserable. I'm sorry, just not nice people. And probably because they're struggling. They're suffering in some way, but we know we're going to see them and it's going to be boo-hoo, everything's going wrong, right? And that gets old after a while because we're all not therapists and we're all not equipped all the time to have these conversations. So Caroline, if we start with ourselves as the silo, can we be a conduit for change within ourselves and then for others, because we are having an impact on other people with our own energy?
Absolutely. We can decide what we are going to, how we're going to respond. So if we know that somebody else is a drama queen, we can either respond to the drama or not. And we can listen, compassionately about all the dramas that they're experiencing or not. But if we don't listen, they will express because they will know they're not being heard. And sometimes that anger is coming out of the fact that they're not being listened to. They don't feel heard, and they're running around in their everyday life, not actually being themselves, being everything to everyone else. And so feedback is really important. When we, at the end of the day, feel really exhausted and feel really angry and just literally want to let rip, then there's something going on for us. And so to be self-managing and to decide, well, what do I want to feel at the end of the day? How do I want to feel now? And there are strategies, there are techniques, practices that you can do to feel different. One of the basic ones that many people do is go to the gym. That they'll sort of say, well, if I go to the gym, I don't like going when it's cold and when it's wet and when the nights are dark. But actually, when I make the effort to go, I always feel good. And I don't know what it is about the gym, but I always feel good. And so that's their go-to, their ritual, their practice to feel different. For me, on Wednesday night, I went and did an ecstatic dance meditation, and I felt amazing, and I felt really, really good. It was the first one that I've been to since April of this year, first public one. And I just thought, gosh, why haven't I been here? I've so missed these. And I danced my little socks off and felt really, really good. So that's one of my go-tos, that I enjoy dancing, and it moves my energy into a different place. For some people, meditate. Just listen to, if you don't know how to meditate, listen to a guided relaxation or a meditation track that's on an app, or, download something or some relaxation music, some chill out music. Music is always an incredible go-to for many people that, sort of want to party. you know, whenever you hear an ABBA song on, it's always, you know, sort of what I call wedding music. You know, everybody gets up and has a dance because it sort of gets you going. There's certain songs that do that, and there's certain songs that make you feel really miserable, you know, and it's about choosing. And we, just as we choose our music and our activity, we can choose how we want to feel every day. And if we don't feel great, it's okay. And it's about managing that perpetuating feeling throughout the day.
Carolyn, I can't thank you enough for all these fabulous tips. And I say this all the time, but it's no wonder you're so good at what it is that you do. So please do reach out to Caroline. She is the expert and she wants to help. She wants to help you feel better. So I ask you to look within your own heart. What is stopping you from feeling better and being the best version of yourself? Are you afraid of something? Are you afraid of sharing your feelings because that might mean that you're going to have to deal with something? I mean, that's how sometimes we just get so caught up in our own lives. We take something that's painful, we put it in this little box and we put it away. And we've discussed this before. Men are really good, just generalizing, at compartmentalizing things. It's almost like you have the sock drawer. Does anybody have this? I don't even know, where they have that like grid and you put one pair of socks in each of the blocks. But guys, at least men that I've known, have been really good at that. It's like, okay, I'm in one box, this is in another box. Whereas with us, our nerves are wired all over the place. But we do that as humans. We take a situation and we say, I don't have the actual mental capacity to deal with this right now because I've got deadlines, I've got this, I've got that. So I'll put it away. And then we know it's still there because every once in a while something peeks out at us and it's like, get back in there. And before you know it, we don't want to deal with it at all. And then we get into a new relationship with someone. And of course, it's going to come back out because it always does. So leave us with this, Caroline, please. When something comes up for us that makes us angry or something makes us sad, which turns into anger, what's that time frame that we need to address it? Number one. And number two, when do we need to seek help when we realize we're not doing a good job addressing it?
Most trauma starts in your very early years, you know, sort of for a lot of people, anything aged up to teenage years, 12, 13, 14. And then when you're an adult, it's hard to reconcile that because we have pushed it down, because we haven't been able to handle it. We haven't been able to control the situation where we didn't have control. So that's where the anger comes from. And so for a lot of people, it's very difficult to be able to know where it's come from because it was so long ago, certainly for adults. For young people, for children, teenagers, young adults, then it's a little easier because it's not so many years. And you know, seeking help, external help, therapy, counseling, you know, whatever you feel is right for you, is when it starts to impact you, or you're feeling that it's impacting you and you can't cope anymore. I'm actually studying at the moment a very intense self-harm and suicide course, which is very, very intensive and showing, you know, sort of detailing all the signs. And this is a very common thing, that anger can be expressed through self-harming, you know, through taking the pain away emotionally and moving it into a physical pain to counteract the pain. And this is something that many people seem to be using as a strategy. And actually, it's not a great strategy. And it's because we haven't been taught, we haven't been shown, it's not, we don't know. We just have to find a way of channeling and handling that. And I would say, if there is somebody that is self-harming, this is the point that it's important to reach out. And our young people, there's a lot of young people that are adopting this strategy, which is not healthy. And then if they are doing that because it's been sensationalized, to reach out, to call somebody, to tell someone when they're doing it, and to express their feelings of what's not working for them.
Brilliant, Caroline. Thank you so much. As always, please remember you're not alone. Caroline, what's the best way for people to reach out to you, to call you, to book in for an appointment? Please tell us.
Yeah. If you email me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call international +44 if you're local 0523 120 189. I am here to help you, and you will feel genuinely relaxed by the end of our call.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Always a pleasure to share this screen with you, and you're just doing wonderful work helping others. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you again on Tuesday for your Talking Heads episode.
Look forward to it. Take care.
I do
Bye-bye.
too. Thank you. Bye. And please, as I mentioned before, do reach out to Caroline. She wants to help you. What are you waiting for? It's the first step to feeling better. Take it now, please. Our next show is coming up in our new time slot. It is presenting Pet Psychic Amina. We are going to be exploring a very difficult subject. When is it time to say goodbye to your beloved pet? So please join us for that. Also, as I mentioned, we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary on January 15th. It's a Sunday, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is 4 p.m. I don't know if it's going to be GMT or BST or EIEIO, but please do join us. We would love to have you with us. And please also go over to our YouTube channel. In January, we will be streaming from our website, from USA Global TV and radio. And we will be on YouTube. We will not be on any of the other platforms. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you, everyone. Please stay with us for Pet Psychic Amina and this all important topic. Take care. Bye.